I didn't raise my voice when the HOA president tried to spin the whole situation back on me. She insisted I was the one causing chaos by tampering with community infrastructure. Their lawyer gave me that look, the one that says I was just some stubborn homeowner refusing to cooperate. I didn't flinch. Instead, I reached into the folder I'd been carrying for months. It was thinner than they expected, thicker than I ever wanted it to be. I slid a glossy still frame from my security footage across the table. The shot was crisp, time-stamped, and painfully clear. 3 board members standing in my yard at 2:14 a.m., shovels in hand, carving a clean trench around my house like they were circling prey. Nobody said a word for a solid 10 seconds. Their lawyer blinked once, leaned in, then sat back so slowly you'd think the chair was made of glass. That was the moment I knew I'd won, not because I'd yelled or threatened or made a scene, but because the truth had finally been dragged into the light. Pixel by pixel. Most people assume that if you end up in a fight with an HOA, you must have gone looking for drama. But the truth is, I moved to that neighborhood because I was doing the exact opposite. After 20 years managing construction projects, 12-hour days, and a divorce that felt like someone had scooped out everything soft inside me, I just wanted a place where nothing unexpected happened. The house wasn't fancy. It was a 1970s ranch style on the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac, half buried under old oak trees. Quiet enough that you could hear the wind settle every evening. It had a backyard large enough for a workshed, a view of a little creek nobody bothered with, and a driveway long enough for my truck and trailer. I pictured myself grilling on weekends, fixing up the shed, drinking coffee on the porch while neighborhood kids biked past. I wasn't chasing peace. I was begging for it. The first few months were exactly what I hoped for. I worked, slept, minded my own business. I met neighbors briefly, garage door hellos, wave and walk moments. I wasn't trying to join committees or be part of anyone's social orbit. My life had been too loud for too long, and the silence felt like healing. Some evenings, I'd sit outside and just listen to nothing, the soft kind of nothing that feels like it's patching holes in you. I wasn't fixing the world. I was fixing myself, one quiet day at a time. Then came the first sign of trouble. One Monday morning, I found a bright yellow notice tucked crookedly under my windshield wiper, like a parking ticket. It mentioned unauthorized structural modifications. At first, I didn't understand. Nothing about my house had changed since I moved in. When I read the fine print, something about possible grading changes, adjacent to property lines, I thought maybe they'd mix me up with someone else. There was no grading project, no landscaping crew, nothing. I walked around the house twice, confused, wondering if maybe the previous owner had started something I hadn't noticed. But the yard looked the same, overgrown ivy. Cracked walkway, the kind of yard an HO I would usually complain about for being too natural. I shrugged it off, figured it was a clerical mistake. 2 days later, another notice arrived. This time, it accused me of knowingly altering community boundary contours. The language was so over the top, I actually laughed. Maybe some automated system had gone rogue? I emailed the HOA politely, attached photos of my yard, and asked them to clarify what exactly they believed I'd modified. 6 days later, I got a reply, just 6 words: comply with all community standards immediately. No attachments, no explanation, no signature. Just an order. Something about the tone made me twitch, but I wasn't angry yet. Annoyed, sure, but I dealt with enough bureaucrats in my career to know sometimes incompetence is just incompetence. I sent a second email asking for specifics. Copied the community manager, kept the tone polite. Silence, not even an auto reply. It wasn't until a third notice arrived threatening escalating, fines and legal action, that something in my chest shifted. Confusion turned into something colder, steadier. I had tried being reasonable, asking questions, and they were treating me like a child who tracked mud in the house. So I walked down to their office, not angrily, not storming in, but in that quiet way you walk when you've already given someone more chances than they deserve. I waited 20 minutes in a lobby that smelled like air freshener and acrylic paint. When the president finally came out, she wore the expression of someone who had already decided everything was my fault. I explained calmly that nothing had changed on my property. She stared at me like I was lying about my own yard. Well, she said finally, we've had reports. Concerned residents, multiple. She didn't name them, describe the reports, or give dates or details. Just the vague shadow of anonymous complaints. If you've ever dealt with a petty HOA, that's their favorite weapon of mysterious everyone, who always agrees with them. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. She smirked, just a tiny one, when she told me I had 30 days to restore compliance or face significant consequences. It wasn't the words that got me. It was that smirk, like she already believed she'd cornered me. Like she thought I was the kind of person who would panic at a strongly worded letter. That was the last day. I tried to be friendly. I stopped emailing. Stopped asking questions. Stopped assuming this was just incompetence. Instead, I pulled the original survey from my closing documents, printed every piece of correspondence, and walked through my yard with a notebook and tape measure. Something wasn't adding up. And if there's one thing 20 years in construction teaches you, it's how to spot manipulation in dirt. I took photos, walked the perimeter, documented everything down to the pattern of old leaves in the grass. Then 2 weeks later, something changed. I woke up early one morning, earlier than usual, because the house felt wrong. Not loud wrong or dangerous wrong, just off. I went outside and saw a thin, sharp line carved into the earth along the left side of my house. A trench, maybe 4 inches deep, running so clean and straight, it couldn't possibly be natural. It circled halfway around the house, like someone had started digging and stopped only because they got interrupted or tired. The soil was still loose. It hadn't rained. Someone had done it recently. My stomach dropped slowly, in a controlled way. Not fear, realization. They were trying to manufacture a violation. I knew exactly what would happen next. They'd claim I dug the trench, use it as evidence of grading changes, and escalate penalties. And if I tried to argue, it would be my word against the board's mysterious reports. What they didn't know was I'd already installed cameras. I hadn't planned to. It wasn't paranoia. It was exhaustion. After that smirk, after those cryptic threats, after those aggressive notices, I'd bought a set of small, weatherproof, motion-activated cameras and tucked them into the gutters and oak trees. Not because I expected sabotage, just because I needed proof of whatever they might pull next. 2 nights later, the cameras caught it all. 3 board members, 2 men, and the president herself walked onto my property at 2 a.m. They carried shovels. They whispered. They dug. They circled my house like buzzards marking territory. And the whole time, they acted like they were doing nothing wrong. Like this was just another night in their little kingdom. When I watched the footage the next morning, I didn't feel angry. I felt something quieter, heavier, like a door had finally clicked shut on any benefit of the doubt I had left. I copied the footage to 3 drives, backed it up to the cloud, and mailed a copy to my sister out of sheer instinct. People like that don't stop when you catch them once. They doubled down. I didn't confront them. I didn't send the footage to the HOA. I didn't warn the neighbors. I stayed quiet. I collected more. For 3 weeks, I let the cameras roll. They came back twice. Dug more, took measurements, left notes on each other's cars. It was almost comical watching grown adults sneak around like raccoons convinced they were masterminds. They had no idea every grain of dirt they moved was being recorded in high definition. Meanwhile, the notices escalated. Now they accuse me of deliberate ground disruption, unauthorized excavation, and refusal to cooperate. They attached photos of the trench as if it were some damning evidence. I printed every notice, added it to the file, and waited. The best revenge is patience. When the inevitable hearing was scheduled, I arrived exactly on time, carrying my small, unassuming folder. The board looked confident, almost excited. They had their stack of fabricated photos, a packet of supposed neighbor complaints, and a script they clearly thought would intimidate me into admitting guilt I didn't have. Instead, I let them talk first. I let them accuse. I let them insist they had proof. I waited until they finished reciting their pre-written narrative about community standards and respect for rules. Then I placed the still frame from my footage on the table. The room went silent. You know what happened next? The lawyer paling. The president blinking like she'd swallowed a stone. The sudden shift from arrogance to fear. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to explain myself. The timestamp did all the talking. The footage showed everything: the trespassing, the destruction of property, the coordinated attempt to frame me. When I told them there were 47 hours of recordings, the lawyer's hand actually shook. They didn't try to justify it. They didn't apologize. They didn't say a word. The investigation started that week. 3 board members resigned quietly, citing health reasons. The president tried to blame miscommunication, but the county didn't buy it. They faced fines, civil charges, and one was removed from the board by court order. The HOA's power structure collapsed inward like wet cardboard. Several neighbors approached me in private, admitting they'd been bullied for years but were too afraid to fight back. Committees dissolved. Rules were written. And the best part? The new board apologized genuinely, not performatively, and introduced a rule that no board member could set foot on a resident's property without written permission. My life didn't magically become perfect after that, but it became peaceful again. And peace, once you fought for it, tastes different, stronger, quieter. Now, when I drive through the neighborhood, some people wave, some avoid eye contact, some look like they want to say something but don't dare. It doesn't matter. I didn't do any of it for their approval. I did it because sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to make sure they see themselves clearly under good lighting, from multiple angles with perfect audio. And now, it's quiet again, exactly the way I wanted it.